may remember.
It did that to me last night too.
As you remember, this is an additional planning committee meeting. It's not our full-fledged agenda, so we did decide to keep it very minimal, you know, 1 or 2 topics only. If you noticed, we have, like I discussed last time, we're kind of changing the format a little bit, so it's more in line like with Ed Services and some of those others, where there's an update section, there's a discussion section, and then action items. So 2 items today under the updates, and one is regarding the superintendent check-in, and we need to make a change or make sure it's reflected properly in the minutes. It's not called a superintendent evaluation, it's a superintendent check-in. So those quarterly ones are check-ins. We were kind of getting to that habit last year. It's a very easy slip up. But that date is that October, is that correct date, October 21st? I was double checking that. I had it, now I just questioned myself.
We don't have anything next week, it's the following Monday, so it'd be the 21st. And
Yes.
HR committee.
Yeah, so it starts at 7, so HR 5:30 to about 7, then we'll start right thereafter. And then secondly, the board retreat is scheduled for October 30th from 5 to 9 p.m. I talked with Tina today, the details are forthcoming. Watch your inbox for agenda and location, those will be finalized here either late this week, early next week. And Drew Howlick again is going to be our facilitator. So any questions on those brief reminder updates? Okay, then moving into the meat of our discussion today, our discussion's going to revolve solely around strategic planning, like we talked about before. One thing that we had really looked at or looked for was, what does the strategic plan look like from a 1-year lens and a multi-year lens? So Jason's been working to pull that together. There were more pieces to that than just the 1-year, 2-year, 3-year. We had talked about, what do the student survey questions look like? And you'll see that was an attachment. So I'm just going to turn it over to him to kind of walk us through step by step. And you decide, Jason, do you want questions as we go? Do you want to save questions to the end? How?
Yeah, I was planning on pausing a lot.
Perfect.
And natural
So we'll wait
times
to
where
the
we talk
natural
about a
pause.
section. Yep, okay.
Excellent,
Thank you very much, yep. Thank you. I think an important part here is that this is a work in progress, right? I think I've looked at this document, no shortage of 100 times. So, and at some point, you don't find the mistakes anymore, right?
Absolutely.
So like, this is a time for feedback and input and really hopefully set us up for the full board discussion around strategic planning on October 28th. And the Donovan Group continues to be a partner. I meet with Lori and Michelle every other week for a check-in, and then we have monthly internal meetings. Lori could not be here tonight for 2 reasons. One, it was originally a conflict, and 2, she's in Florida. And I talked to her this morning. She has no power, and she's traveling to see the condition of her home. So I haven't heard an update, but she wants to be here, and she'll be here in person. I think the plan was to be here on the 28th with us.
Okay.
Really have 3 things. I want to walk us through year 1, 2, and 3. And get your feedback, right? We have some marketing materials that are included. So get your feedback here. Melissa's here. Thank you very much. And we also have a list of what forthcoming marketing materials will be, and I'll share that with you. And then the third kind of group of pieces are, I have included the Studer survey that we no longer do, but is the student engagement survey. And then we have some questions from school perceptions that I would love your feedback on. I think that's it. So I want to share my screen with folks. And so let me get back to here, please, one moment. And so the first piece we'll look at is year 1. And again, I will pause throughout and really look for your feedback and questions. The goal is to make this an exciting document for everyone involved with our district and community. So the mission, vision, core values, and priority areas should be familiar to you. Those have not changed. One thing that did change in our first go around at this, we called those priority areas strategies. But we got some feedback that that didn't make sense. So that's the only change was we're calling them priority areas versus strategies. The words did not change. And you'll see that priority area in the blue bar here. And the pieces below that are really an attempt to have working definitions of what those priorities mean in practical terms. And so what does all-in team means? It's really the HR piece, right? It talks about recruiting, developing, supporting, retaining great people. And I won't read any of this to you, but you'll see that. And so the blue words are the priority areas, the black words are the fonts is really our working definitions. And so here I'll pause. Any questions about mission, vision, priority areas, core values, or priority area definitions? Again, these are all pieces we've seen before.
Hold on.
Please.
Tina had a question that she forwarded earlier, just about the, find out, the core values.
Yep. I was gonna talk about that in the next section.
Okay, then I'll wait.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts there? Okay. I'm gonna move to goal areas. And again, these have been revised a little bit since the last time you saw it, really based on feedback and more to make sure there's greater clarity, right? And so we're not defining what math is there.
Right.
We're saying how we'll measure math. And so I think the last couple sentences are pieces that we revised after discussions with the internal group, just making sure that folks know that whether you're testing on the DLM, that dynamic learning maps that some of our students in special ed receive, they're included in our data, right? So we're just calling that out, making sure that people know. And that's similar to literacy there. Just calling out that everyone is part of this data set. And the post-secondary pieces have not been changed. Worked really closely with Sarah Tarpey to really define that. She is an expert, and so she's helped a lot in what those kind of capturing what data sets fall into those categories. And then the last piece is our core values. The words and definitions have not changed. That came, rose to the top from our community group, and then I believe our planning committee had some input about the working definitions, and those have not changed. There was some questions about, core values. We've had them before. How do we make them alive? And the things that I think about is that I'm really excited about core values and their connection to the student engagement survey. That was not the case in the past, right? And I believe that what we measure is what will grow. And so we'll measure our core values from a student lens. And we'll also, I think it'll be important for us to educate and re-educate folks, students, staff, and parents about what these core values mean to our district. And so that'll be important work that we carry forward. I'm going to pause there. Any questions about the goal areas?
It's a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm trying, so bear with me if I'm
All good.
asking something and you may be, when we're talking about, and I don't know if this is appropriate now, like looking, for instance, for math, student performance levels of math, we're looking at the grade 8 level, and then the DLM. Is this just a broad spectrum? Because we also are looking at elementary. I mean, is this just like big picture focus, or how are we not going to be focusing on high school or elementary? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely. Great question. And so what I would say is that from a district lens, strategic plan lens, we would be bringing regularly data around 8th grade math, right? In part, because on our state report card, it's twice, it shows it twice, right?
Right.
In addition though, every building that we have school goals, and they have right now, and will continue, have school goals around math, literacy, and student engagement.
Right.
And so our building level will support the math goals, but our district kind of strategic.
That
plan
makes
is around-
sense, and I just wanted clarity, because I have, when you look down, you
Yep.
do see building levels, so I
Yep.
knew they were there, I just didn't, just
Yep.
to be clear on big
Absolutely.
picture, yeah.
And ditto for literacy, right? It says third grade, again, shows up on the report card, our elementary schools twice, but every building has school goals around those at
Okay.
literacy as well.
Thank
Great
you for that
question.
clarity, I
Yeah, absolutely.
appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I had that question when we
Yeah.
were doing planning, because I didn't wrap my brain around it. So if
It's a
you
lot.
weren't going to, I was gonna,
Okay.
so
good,
thank you.
Good.
And this is great discussion, right? So
Mhm.
thank you, yeah.
Mhm.
I have 4 questions that Sam forwarded to me. It's who will be the
Oh, Can
expert?
we hold on a second?
Sure.
Because he's not a committee member. Can we get through committee members? But do you have any committee members? Because I have a couple first, and then
No,
we'll jump
go
to Sam.
ahead, go ahead.
So we'll get to that, but just within
Gotcha.
that first, but that's perfect. Did you have any from your lens?
Well, are we talking about the student surveys right now?
No.
We're just talking, if we could, just, I'll chunk it and stop after every
Okay,
section.
yeah,
Please.
no, those are the questions I have.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I only have one
Yep.
on this, and that's regarding, the 2 columns that say post-secondary preparation data and goal, post-secondary prep, one is, well, they both say preparation data and goal in the table.
Hang on,
In the
Here,
definition up above, one of them says
Right, yeah.
secondary preparation and post-secondary certifications.
yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
needs
yeah,
some
you're
greater
right.
clarity, yeah. So
So,
they're both falling into post-secondary prep, but one is certifications, one is credentials.
so we need to delineate that in the
Yep.
table.
Yep.
And then,
Are you looking here at, when you say table?
yes,
Okay,
so at the top there, they both say preparation.
Yep.
Where you are,
Yep.
because I'm trying to look to see, because I'm just matching
It's great
that up.
Feedback, yep.
That would explain why I was confused, and I couldn't figure out why I was confused,
And-
but
and
that's a
with
very
that-
simple thing, yes.
When we talk post-secondary preparation, are we thinking course, the enrollment in coursework? And then the certification is the completion of?
Yep, so, I would refer to this, right? So if we think about certifications, we're really talking about technical diplomas, co-op experiences, it's all recorded here, versus credentials are dual programs, such as dual credit, and AP and transcripted.
So there it
that's
says,
the difference.
right, and it says post-secondary credential dual programs. Well, not all of them are dual.
Yep.
In that, so post-secondary credential programs are programs in which students participate in coursework, blah, 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 blah. And that's where you then have dual enrollment.
Yep.
So just
Mhm.
little minor, then that clears it up, but the
That's
main
good.
thing I was confused with was the 2 categories were,
Yep.
and I don't know which is which.
Yeah.
Yep,
That
we'll
So-
clean it up.
Answer
Thank
some
you.
of my questions
Yes.
later. Okay,
Perfect. This is
All
what
right.
we need, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what, yeah. All right, and then back to you, Dan, you had some questions.
Yeah,
from-
Who will be the external vendor for surveys?
I am suggesting, and we'll talk about that later, about, there's a document in there, in our, supporting documents, that has the survey questions, so we'll
Let's
talk about
hold
it.
that till we get to surveys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is just on these, and I have the same with Tina, they're broken into,
Oh, well, yeah,
things, so yeah.
will there be a curriculum for staff that models the core values of the district?
I haven't thought of that, right? But I think as I mentioned, it'll be the role of the leadership of this district to educate and re-educate. I don't know if it's a curriculum, right, to be real honest. So that's something we have to think about.
And Sam asked if there was a name for this, obviously not yet, right? A name for what he says is curriculum?
Yes.
And how are we going to ensure that it's values neutral, given that it revolves around a set of values?
Yeah, those are great questions. And I guess off the top of my head, things that I think about are, there's certainly opportunities when we onboard folks, new members of our district, to expose them to these core values. Like I said, we haven't talked, I haven't thought about, I've had no discussions about an actual curriculum for staff. But that's something for us to think about, yeah. And the value neutral, I guess my response would be that we will be focused on how we define that, right? If we're saying empathy is considering and understanding others' perspectives to create a caring school community, that will be the focus of the work.
So it's not necessary that the idea is to help kids with that skill of considering and understanding, not necessarily a particular value.
Right.
Is my understanding. Does that make sense to you? Is Sam listening, or is he gonna relay?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
Okay.
I don't see in my mind.
And
so,
this will come up at full, we're presenting this full board also, so
Absolutely.
additional
Yeah.
clarification can come there as well.
Perfect, yeah. Mhm.
so as far as the application of these, I guess that's what I would look at is, how are we going to instill this in the students?
Mhm.
Is that gonna be up to the individual teacher?
No, I've, we started, Sarah Cole brought forth those discussions about behaviors, right? I think the next layer is to talk about exactly that thing, how will we?
Okay.
And Tina had questions similar to that. Hers were that there were some concerns about the core values and what would be done to implement, so kind of in that same line.
Yeah,
And we've had a long-standing culture of this not working, but as Jason pointed out, it's never been a focus. And so we can't really measure what's been done in the past if we haven't really focused on it. So as we go to move forward, it's just, what does that look like? And because you said it's a work in progress, it's going to evolve, over time. And her additional questions are, what does this look like for the board? What does this look like for administration? And those are all things that are forthcoming, I think.
Yeah.
Will that have some separate goals and plans within, or is it just an overarching piece? And then she just wanted to add that from the HR lens, nothing changes for retention of staff until the culture changes. She says we're in dire need of a culture shift, and if we say we're gonna do this, then we need to do it. So that's just making sure that her voice is here as well today.
Thank you. And I'm taking notes, and I think there's an opportunity to think about how core value development shows up in year 2 and 3. So I'll take that back to the internal team.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. I'm gonna move forward, is that all right?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm just gonna focus on the measurements. And so again, it says, how are these measured 1 year? And so math, data, and goal, we're really focusing on 8th grade math, as we said. Here's some 21-22, 22-23, 23-24 data that Chris Malloy has helped us with. And using some statistics and calculus and derivatives and integrals, she is saying 51% is the goal that we should be looking towards for this year. And I won't read these to you, but the same thought goes for literacy, right? 3rd grade, some 3-year data, and established goal of 53% at the end of this year. Certifications, again, how we define them. These are the percentages over 3 years now. And then we're saying a 43% goal. Post-secondary credentials, that's the dual credit AP. We're saying 100% of the graduating class, and we want to maintain that. And then core values, again, we're saying these are core values, and the data here is just saying we need to establish baseline data from this engagement survey that we're going to talk about later.
Questions? Okay, I have one.
Please.
It revolves around this and it kind of bends into years 2 and 3, but I'm gonna plant the seed here. And that is, when I first looked at this, I thought, ooh, are these numbers high enough? But you don't want them too high. So then I looked longitudinally at the 3 years, and right now, by the end of that third year, math is a 6% gain, literacy is a 6%, post-secondary is 4%. And even at 6%, that's pretty hard to achieve.
Mhm.
So these are pretty lofty, even though they don't seem that way. So I just wanted to state that
Yes,
piece.
I noticed that.
But my bigger question is, typically we look at things longitudinally from class to class, we stay with a given class. But each year, when we look at 8th grade math, it's a different cohort.
Mhm.
And so those numbers could start at a different place. And so I'm just wondering, how does that affect our data analysis? Because while we're looking at the same grade level, we're not looking at the same cohort of students.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does.
Did I explain that
And
okay?
that is the very struggle that Chris and I had when we're talking about goals, right? Because Chris, as you know, is phenomenal, right? She's showing me by cohort what it looks like. And this goal will be a stretch, right? If the data holds true, we know this goal will be a stretch for forthcoming 8th graders.
Right.
Or it might be a little low for some 8th graders. So that's the balancing act. There's a little bit of statistics, a little bit of gut, and a little bit of let's stretch, right? And so it's not a perfect science, and what I would tell you. And over time, if we sit here in 3 years and say we achieve 6 or more % in math, I think we'd be celebrating,
Mhm.
right? And so that's the long goal, the long game.
But with that, and again, we can discuss this further when we talk about years 2 or year 3, and I'm hypothetically, I don't have those numbers in front of me, if this year's 7th grade group is at 58% already, I don't think they are, but if they are,
Right, right.
but the goal is here, so I'm assuming, but I don't like to assume, I'm assuming that was already taken into consideration as well, that these are still within the markers.
There's no goal that is below what we would forecast for a forthcoming cohort.
So all of them are still on a similar trajectory.
Right.
Okay.
The gap for that cohort may be smaller or bigger, but it's not below what we would
Got it.
forecast. Yep.
Okay.
That's great questions. Thank you.
It is gonna be hard to measure those core values because there could be one kid in the class that is not, he's not using any of those. And he's a bad leader and he's the guy that the other kids follow and so forth. And so the whole class gets graded on one kid's behavior.
Yeah, I'll talk more about it, but School Perceptions is
Yeah.
our vendor. They do our staff engagement survey, and I've worked with them in the past. And we get data from the district level, we get data from the building level, we can get data down to the student level. And so we can see those
Okay,
outliers are here. All right.
Can you just say again which column is which? Like what you were talking about earlier?
Which
I
ones?
didn't write it down and
Yep.
now,
And so this column where my cursor is, that's secondary prep.
okay,
And so that is certifications. And so if I scroll up, it's a lot of scrolling back and forth, but that's like technical diploma, co-op, youth apprentice.
Mhm.
The next one to the right is credentials, and that's like AP dual credit.
okay.
And I see where the mistake came, because they're both in the definitions area, they both start with post-secondary
Yes.
preparation.
I'll
It's the definer, yeah.
Right. I'll
So
work
can
with
you,
Lori Miller to clean that up.
can you just help me out?
Yep.
100% of graduating class, what is that?
So that means that we have 100% of last year's graduating class that have one or more transcripted, or, that's the key word, or, right? Dual enrollment, or AP.
Every single student.
Had one or
had
more of those things.
Something at the college level, basically.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
That's impressive.
Well, and I think that was where I was like, I mean,
That's extremely impressive,
yeah,
and we want to maintain that, right?
okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank
But
you.
I'm glad you asked that, because that doesn't clearly
Say that,
state that. I mean, it does, but
right,
it's more impressive when you get the
We can clean
Well,
it.
and I didn't know it was at 100, I knew it wasn't 100% for every class that was taken, right? Because I know that,
Freshmen don't have that.
right, you know, but I wasn't sure what that 100% was actually stating,
Yep.
so, thank
And
you.
I'll work with Lori to clean that up. I'm sure she has some ideas. I'm gonna move on to the next section, if that's right.
One last thing on the
Please.
column we were.
Yep.
Those two columns, just for consistency, in 2023-24, it says 100% or blah, blah, blah percent of graduating class.
Yep.
No other ones of those say that.
Good call.
So do they all say that? Do none of them say that? You know, just to make sure that, because otherwise it doesn't imply that the data is consistent.
Thank you. Yep. I'm gonna move on. So here, if you follow along in the televisions here, what we have here is, here's the priority area that we've already defined. This section is about inspired academic excellence and student growth. The parentheses here is kind of the departments that own that, right? Student services, special ed, curriculum and instruction, and innovation and strategy departments. Here, the columns indicate the strategies. What are the action items under each of those areas that we will navigate this year, right? And I'm not going to read this to you. I'll just pick some things and just talk through it. This says, I follow my cursor, says we're implementing Bridges as a math resource consistently, because it's in the math column, consistently across K-5 schools. That's happening right now, for example. I'll just pick one from each category and give you time for me to stop talking and take a look at it. If you look at literacy, so this is the literacy column, right? It's all aligned. The strategy here is, one is that execute keys to literacy professional development. That is happening right now, right? And so that is something that over time we would be able to provide the board with updates. 100% of our elementary staff completed this professional development, whatever it is. If you look at certifications, they're very similar. The strategies are the same, really. And so, for example, it says collaboratively review state standards and update or develop options. The CTE team is working on our PD days to accomplish this work. So again, we'd be in a position to say, here's how that work has transpired. And then core values is, for example, develop core values engagement survey with external vendor, right? So that's the work that we're doing now. I won't read these all to you, but I will pause, give you time to look at all of them. If there's any questions or comments, I'm happy to talk through it with you.
I'm gonna hold on, because I don't really think it's necessary question.
Okay. Dan,
No, I'm good.
I have one
Please.
that I think I know the answer to, but I'm gonna ask it anyway because Lori might be thinking it too.
I don't know.
I understand that and this is just, I have to get both feet out of the past and into the present.
Mhm.
I understand that math is focusing on 8th grade as for the goal target area, and literacy is focusing on 3rd grade. In the strategic plan, as we write with that, we're looking at all grades. So can you just, very generally speaking, talk me through, what does this look like at the high school?
Yeah.
Because they aren't part of the data collection here, but there's nothing reflected in a priority area in the plan either. And so I don't want it to seem, because right now from a public's perspective, it looks like it's excluded. And so how do we was that kind of where you were going?
Yep, I'm still
I'm trying to wrap my brain
off of what I asked earlier.
around
that's
that.
fine.
I don't
Well, I guess, to call out the obvious here, there are strategies, there's action at the high school that isn't listed because it's above 8th grade. So we
Right.
made a decision, right?
No,
So, for example, high school math is implementing,
Yeah,
I
they're
forget the
bad.
resource, there's a new math resource this year. They're also using IXL in a different way this year for math as a diagnostic, right? They're receiving PD. We just made a decision not to list it because it
It's
is
above-
above
right.
eighth grade.
That was my
exactly what
assumption.
My question was, because I was like, but we also implemented it. I mean, and
Right. And,
it is to help our goals. So
Right.
I just wanted to be sure there was a reason why it
and it
wasn't.
does show up in their building plans.
Okay.
I just wanna make sure we're asking it here, because if community members ask us,
Right,
we can clearly communicate that.
Absolutely.
The other question that I have, and I'm glad you brought up IXL, because that is a key strategy, but that's not listed here at all. And that's going to be utilized to not only close the gap for students that are functioning below grade level, but also to, as enrichment for those that are above. So that would, I just wonder if that can be somehow in there.
it's listed, but it's not called out by IXL. And so maybe we just need to add that. Gather and use math diagnostic student data at the middle, that's really IXL.
I think we need to call it out.
Yep, good call.
I think that'd be a good idea.
And what is IXL?
So, it's really math and literacy.
Is it an acronym?
No.
Probably,
Well, it is.
but it's a company,
So
it's software.
Software.
And
it's,
so, the middle school, this is year 2. It aligns with resources, which is unique. So like, you tell the system that we use Open Up Math, right? And it connects with the resource and the standards, the math standards, for example. And students last year, it was your first year at the middle school, our staff and students really used it to develop skills, right? So Jason needs some help in fractions, I would work on fractions, right? This year, we added the use of it to gather diagnostic data at the beginning of the year. So now the staff has data that says, you know, Jason needs help in fractions, and here's a prescriptive things that he should be working on. And that's for every student.
When does that happen? I mean, during a regular class period? Yeah.
It's about 15 minutes to do the diagnostics. So they do it, we have it on the assessment calendar. They have a 2 or 3 week window to do it. So teachers do that. Chris gathers the data and then brings it back to the teachers that are working with the teachers.
so,
And I know that, go ahead.
no, what I was gonna say is the piece in there is kids can log into this at any time. It's educationally based, like you'll have your problems. It's game based, so they win rewards to play games and whatever. It goes all the way through high school. And so when they take that diagnostic, we pay for the premium version for students. There's a free version also that doesn't have all this. They can enter their STAR score and it puts them right in, here's where we're at. So now this is where they can be extended. These are gaps that need to be filled, but it's personalized, actually individualized for each student. So they can grow where they need to grow.
So they could do it at home,
They can do it
on
at
their own.
home. They have it throughout the summer. And that was some of the questions I've been asking at other meetings. How are we communicating this to families so they realize they can utilize this over the summer? So even if they're not at summer school, that's what they use at summer school, for example, as well. But all kids have this. And so they can extend their learning, not just
At all,
fill in the gaps.
and from what I have seen just with my son, it's at all math levels.
It's all math levels, but
All
there's
math
also
levels, so-
literacy,
Yeah.
science,
Yeah.
social studies. It's the different curricular
Mhm.
levels as well. It's pretty comprehensive. It's not as rich as what the math program is. It's kind of the way we learn math,
Sure.
pretty simplistic in format,
Mhm.
but it really it's the meat and potatoes, if
It's,
you will.
it's a good supplement to
Yes.
the instruction,
Yeah.
right?
And more about PD, what's that?
So we have a fabulous partner from IXL. I couldn't tell you all the schedules, but she does, but she regularly works with the math team at the middle school because it's year 2. We only use IXL literacy at the middle school with our special ed students. At the high school, we use it in math, so she's regularly providing PD. She just did some PD with Chris Malloy and Sam, the new instructional coach there. And we also have enough seats for junior level at the high school because the team wanted it to support ACT development. And they do PD with the,
I remember Jack doing literacy.
So they're
classes.
really plugging in, where needed by kind of a group of people.
Mhm.
It's a great partnership. We do not have it at the elementary school right now. We had one school pilot it last year. They're advocating for it, of course.
Oh, I bet.
And, our partner is working on a quote for me right now, so. Everything's got a cost, right?
Right.
All right.
Any additional questions?
I'm
Okay,
gonna move us down to, the next, priority area. And again, I won't read this all to you, but, this is all in teams, so that's really the HR department. Here are strategies, many of them are replicated across, right?
Mhm.
And so I think we talked about at the HR committee about rapid cycle feedback. So that's a new model for how we observe and give feedback to the staff, and that's at all levels. And I'll pick a different one. We'll do the staff. We're doing staff rounding right now. We were at the high school all Monday, the middle school today. So that's an example. Again, I don't want to read all these to you. But Margaret is working to develop a comprehensive educator compensation model. Had a meeting last night with our partners. And so, again, don't want to read this to you, but many of the pieces show up in all, HR is unique in that we believe that these strategies will impact math, literacy, every area. Questions?
So we don't just fire staff, we execute them as well?
We do that through the rapid cycle.
Yeah.
Yes.
so, did you have one, Lori?
Give me a second, carry on for a minute.
Carry on.
I do. So the positive behavior supports plan.
Yep.
I believe HR worked on that, correct? That was done based on, I'm just trying to remember.
Sarah O brought it to the team,
Okay,
and, so it shows up here because it was kind of through the staff engagement survey.
that's what and I think it did, I think HR did.
Yep.
I guess where I was wondering is I noticed that begin work to develop comprehensive educator compensation model.
Yep.
And implement. So you're developing and implementing in one,
So those are two different things.
kind of like a
right?
rapid thing, or it's separate?
Those are separate. So
Okay.
right now, begin work. So last night, for example, I'll highlight this here. This means we're working on the compensation model. So last night,
You're right.
we had 20 staff members-ish, and they started the conversation. This means we're doing it,
Okay,
right?
right.
And
I
again-
think I got my,
And then up here, this executing, that's like, they get to choose how they're executed.
okay.
So my question is
Please.
this. I'm very linear. This does not flow for me in a very linear fashion.
Yeah.
Right.
Because as I'm looking at the column, math goals, and I'm looking down, while I understand that they impact each other, we're saying the same thing, basically, in the first two columns. Is there a better way we can do this, that we can communicate this? If I look at, I'll talk about the post-college, the post-secondary prep.
Yeah.
Rounding, that's, that's not just post-sec, so.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? I
I
guess
agree.
I'm not, I think this is gonna be confusing for the public. I would hope that there's a better way, I've tried to wrap my brain around, even since you and I had spoken about it, that, okay, I understand how this works, but putting a lens from someone that doesn't sit in this meeting and hear this feedback, I don't know how clear this is going to be.
I will, I wrote it down, and that's something that I would leverage Lori Miller to help us with, right?
Perfect.
Yep, and I think that's their work, and they've been great. I'm gonna move to the next section, if that's all right.
Perfect.
Connecting as community, and so the priority areas here, right? It's really the superintendent and communications department, that means Melissa. And so these are the strategies. Again, I won't read them to you, but some highlights. We have 3 town halls scheduled, and so we're excited. The first one's coming up in November. We'll talk about what a community engagement survey looks like. We'll do a parent survey, And, as you've heard, repeatedly, Melissa's working hard with many people to systematize and streamline communications. And so those are the things that we're doing in that section. The fly swatter.
I was thinking the same.
Questions there?
Dan?
The only change there is we added those communication piece, the tools around streamline.
I was hoping we'd have more than 3 town hall meetings.
I can bring it back to the team, right? One, it's one a quarter-ish, right?
Yeah,
Every try.
oh, that's right.
This is just for strategic plan. Referendum may have additional
That's
town
true.
hall meetings that's
Yeah, I
not
was just
listed
gonna ask
here.
that.
I think you're thinking both.
Yep, this is,
I don't wanna, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I
No,
just,
you're right.
that's
No,
a
thank
great
you.
highlight. And, the idea that we talked about is we'd bring 3, 4, 5 topics to talk about, strategic plan, referendum, whatever it is, doesn't have to be that. But then the rest of the time would be Q&A. So, and if 3 goes really well, we can add more, right? And if they don't go so well, we can continue with 3
There's
and
also
talk about.
3 separate meetings scheduled the first week of December too, that are all gonna be facility study presentations for the public as well.
These are, right, great. So these are strictly town hall. We bring a couple topics. We want to hear people's questions and feedback.
Will that be the same presentation 3 times?
I believe it will be.
Okay,
In 3 different locations though, to try
Yeah.
to capture more audience.
so going back to my previous comment, my brain's working through here.
Yep.
If we took away the columns and we just had it in that top area, and this was still, these priority areas still delineated off, I think it would have greater impact if we just said, conduct the town hall meetings,
Yep.
once in there.
Yep.
My
Yeah,
added
the repeats.
feedback to that would be, if we already know the dates, let's put them on here.
Yeah.
That way people can pre-plan, put that date on their calendar, mark it, whatever. So if we have that, great. I mean, obviously for the student engagement survey or the parent survey, we don't have that date, but if we have that window, at least putting that in so they can anticipate, because there are people that are pretty calendar focused like I am, that have all of those things
Right.
earmarked in there so they don't miss it.
Listed on the back of the newsletter.
Yes. But just another area
We gotta put them
Yeah,
everywhere.
everyone,
where that
absolutely.
is, yes.
Okay,
Or, I'm
Um,
sorry, we,
go ahead.
no, I was just saying, we haven't been have you been checking online? I don't have access to that. I know I sat online yesterday and it's
It's
easy
hard when you're
to,
in
Right.
conversation.
yes. So
I have not, but thank you. I'll remind myself.
it's hard.
Yep, it's a
That's why
lot.
we have Tyler do that for me.
Melissa, how are we going to execute the community survey?
That I don't know yet. We haven't had that discussion.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot. Every time you say execute,
I
whatever.
know, I got nervous for a
I think you're gonna be, I thought you were gonna be funny.
I'm gonna be like,
well, I have some names for you.
stop.
I mean,
Start a list.
I'm sure that's something, we're so fortunate here that we can directly message everyone who's associated with the district.
Yeah.
But then we would use the newsletter, we'd use our social media, the website, use our community partners, the chamber, other organizations, and push it out there. I'm sure it'd be something
Sure.
people can access online. So we have a nice network to try
Okay.
to spread the word
Lots
that
of
way.
modalities.
So it's something that's gonna be out there it's not gonna be just, we're gonna have it out there for enough time to make sure that people access it
I would assume so.
and utilize
absolutely,
it. Okay,
absolutely.
good.
We haven't had that discussion though internally
No.
yet about when that will happen.
Good. All right, I'm gonna move
I'm
on
gonna
to,
excuse myself to get to another meeting.
okay.
Thank you.
Sorry we
Thank
made
you.
this far. Our next section is intentional resource allocation. So again, this is the business department, right? Kind of owns that. Talking, there are a lot of repeats, of all repeats, right? But we're talking here about leveraging ESSER dollars here. And here we're talking about providing updates to the board. And there's the error right here, bridges, I just caught it. So that's an error, right? And so just using ESSER funds and then providing monthly updates. We had a discussion about should the word referendum show up here? The decision was no, right? We don't want that to be part of the strategic plan,
Mhm.
knowing that we're gonna do some work on that. Questions there?
And I know that
Thank you,
there's
Melissa.
ESSER, I'm just curious, and this is something, maybe Fred, you can, I'm pretty sure ESSER is coming to fiscal. But is it proper, because this is where I get a little confused with the whole ESSER funds. I know that we had ESSER funds that were left. We knew what we were using them on, like for the curriculum. But is it still considered ESSER funds? Because didn't it kind of go into the district sitting there? Is it, do you get what I'm saying? And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, I'm just wondering if it is still, you know, for anybody that knows about ESSER, they know that ESSER is basically done. So I'm wondering if this is gonna look like we're still getting ESSER funding. Does that, and I don't know how, if that's right or wrong. You get what I'm, so just something to think about. I don't know if we wanna go a whole year,
Jason, I would defer to Sarah.
yeah.
And if she wants to relabel that.
Yep.
It was in the process of using ESSER funds, we said, we're gonna use some of this.
Mhm.
And then the funds that we have here,
Mhm.
that we would have used for ESSER, we will use. for
And I
this.
know it gets
And
complicated.
it is, and there may be like residual ESSER appropriation funds or something.
Something, I just don't want it to look like,
I again will defer to Sarah.
yeah, because I would question, wait, we're still getting ESSER funds? Do you get, and that can just cause some confusion.
And Sarah, you know, Sarah basically helped with this, right? Or did help with this, but I can bring it back to her. Good feedback.
My question is, we are through Act 20 looking at elementary literacy right now. How, should that be reflected in here? Is it reflected in here?
Yeah.
It's in the pilot stage right now. I'm purposely not jumping to next, but I don't remember seeing it there and I have a different comment then. But
Yep.
just, should it be, if that, because it is intentional.
Mhm. Yep.
Just wondering.
Yep.
Thank you. Yep. Last section, I'm just gonna move here. It's really talking about, you know, our work with PRA. And then we are using, leveraging common school funds, which is connected to the library, to think about how do we transform library spaces. And then I'll just read it, I won't read the sentence, but try to highlight this. This is an addition, this last sentence. I wanted to capture the idea that this is, especially for next year, not set in stone, right? And so this sentence, data stemming, is really saying that in June and July, our internal team will take a look at the progress we've made, and that might revise our year two, right? I don't want to say year two right now is set in stone and we never touch it again or revise it. And so this is just saying, we'll continuously look at our data, our progress on these strategies, and that we might have to revise year two. So that's what that is really referencing.
And I think that's typically implied.
Yep.
Just my caution would be revising versus changing, because if we change, you know, we still want to make sure we're on a trajectory.
Right.
You know, kind of a piece and not, does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't see us changing goals, but, you know,
Right.
especially strategies,
Well,
right? Something pops up that we didn't, Act
Oh,
Act
yeah, 'cause
21
it's-
comes along, and we say, oh, we gotta change course.
And
right?
that's, yes, and my bad there, because it's strategies, not goals. Thank you.
So one kind of, and I'm not trying to go back, but even like when we're looking at the credentials and where we have the goal of 100%, if we keep every year reaching that goal, is that a time to come up with a new goal for something else? You know what I'm saying? Like, otherwise it looks like, oh, that looks good. We knew that was gonna look good. And then it continues. Shouldn't we then try to come up with a new goal for whatever other, to have, I don't know, whatever that would look like?
Absolutely.
I was thinking the same, and then my thought went to, I think that's a good conversation piece. Our next go around is the strategic plan.
Right.
Because to achieve 100%, multiple years running.
Right.
That's huge. It
It's
might dip
good.
to 99, it might go 98, you know, it's still within that plus or minus realm. But yeah,
But looking at 23, 24, that we had 100%, I can totally say, yeah, our goal is to keep 100%, even year one, year two. I just think future,
Right, and then year 3, hey, as we're starting to look at either
Now-
extending this plan or whatever, then,
that,
yeah.
that it's just kind of a comment more
Yep,
than
yep.
anything that needs to
Appreciate it.
change.
One last piece that I had
Please.
on this,
Yes.
so we have a logo. Is that logo gonna be on the bottom of right now, it's on its own singleton page?
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll.
And I know that's a pagination type
Yep.
thing, but however that
We'll clear it up.
decides to be.
Thank you. All right, year 2, I'm gonna go a little bit quicker, especially at the top, right? This has not been Donovan Group marketized yet, right? And so this is just my work, mostly because, as I was putting this together for the planning committee, we're still getting input from our internal team, right? And so this is fresh off the press, as they might say. And so this will become, a really clean copy. And so again, I'm not gonna spend time here, mission, vision, all these pieces have not changed, right? This is the front matter that explains all the pieces. We wrote down the formatting we can think about doing differently. Goals, you will see different, right? That progression of our goal achievement, I think year 1 is 51%, for example. Now we have 54 in math and 56, so we are progressing. The goal is being increased, except for 100%, right? And again, I'm not gonna read these to you, but what you will see here,
Time out before, can
Please.
we talk each section briefly?
Yes,
Or do you
yes,
wanna
yes.
wait till the end?
no, let's stop.
Minor error, typo in there?
Yep.
Is under math and goal, literacy and goal, that should say 24 or 25, 26 goal,
That's
not
what I was-
24, 25, that's
That's
a
where I
copy
was
paste.
confused, and I
Yep.
thought maybe we
Yep.
didn't wanna update it until we had,
No, that's an error.
But my suggestion would be to have a blank in there for the 24, 25 to be inserted
yeah,
in there as well.
that's where.
So there's not the gap.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Like
And that would be the same in year 3.
Yeah, right, like we will add that and it's already ready to go.
Yep.
That was,
That's an example of you can only look at something so many
Yeah,
times.
I know.
Yep.
No, I appreciate all your work, cause I would.
and honestly, I didn't pick up on that one until right now. I just
Neither did
looked
I,
at it,
yeah,
and then my head was going, cause I'm like, wait, no, that says 26, so yeah. I can
Appreciate it.
get
Yep, thank you. So again, I won't read these to you, but what you'll see in the strategies, some of them are the same. Some of them you'll see progression, right? And so what I mean by that is, the year 1, for example, says provide year 2 professional development. Well, now we're in year 3, right? That's a progression. Using diagnostic data, that we're scratching the surface on that this year, so that remains the same. And so in some areas, it's a progression from the previous year. Sometimes the strategy is new, some of it is the same, if that makes sense. So let me pause and just, if you could take a look at the Inspired Academic and any questions, comments, anything, please. And again, we'll clean up the formatting.
so here's my thought. As we look at this as an overarching document, I like the thoroughness of it. I'm struggling with 3 separate documents.
Yeah,
It's hard to, linearly go, okay, is this year 1, is this year 2? Okay, now does this connect? Is this a progression?
Mhm.
Whereas if it was all in one to begin with, and then maybe broken down for the internal team
Mhm.
into 3 separate documents maybe, but for the global piece of it, where under Inspired Academic Excellence and Student Growth, here's year 1, here's year 2, and we can see that progression in one place in one document.
Because my printer wouldn't print, I was screenshotting 1 year and comparing on, so yes,
Yep.
it was a struggle.
It's just, it's a thought,
Mhm.
but again, I'm looking the way I've always looked. I'm trying to put a new lens to it. So if you say, hey, we're doing this way because, help me wrap my brain around why this is a better,
Yeah.
and I'm good with it.
It's because now, as we develop this, I wanted to differentiate between year 1, 2, and 3. But again, we'll look for Donovan Group to bring it together in one, beautiful, easy to understand document.
I do have one what do we mean by develop plan to infuse CTE? What is infuse?
I'm sorry, where you at?
So if you're looking at inspired academic and it's
Oh,
in
yep, yep, I
the
see it. Yep, thank you.
credentials,
So the first year, if you look back at year one, it says like, continue, review new state standards. So reviewing and understanding. This year says infusing. Well, we're gonna take those standards and infuse it into the curriculum, what we're doing.
Is implement a better word?
Could be.
I think that was where I was kind of thinking, we have to think of non-educators.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying, that aren't seeing this stuff on a regular basis and making sure that it, I know you're not gonna be able to explain it all,
Yep.
because there are gonna be questions,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You have to abbreviate some of the stuff. But I just thought maybe trying to be consistent, infused was a word that we don't see very often, so thank you.
And this is a great case in point where under this particular topic or strand or whatever we want to call it, this is what year one, year two, and it very logically
Shows the-
flows.
Right,
It's just hard because we're multiple page documents in multiple documents.
mhm.
And some things get lost in
And
there
I've
too.
been seeing a lot of implement, and I think everyone understands what implement, so I think that may be
Thank you.
consistent.
I don't wanna rush us, but,
No, you're
No,
good.
no, go ahead.
again, HR, right, all in team. I think there's some things, that are new here. You know, the year one is create a compensation model. Here we say implementation. Below that here, analyze, we have a support staff salary piece right now. Here, Margaret talked about, well, we should be thinking about what was the impact on that. So, you know, that's the next step. And I won't read these to you. Many of the same pieces, and again, definitely can clean it up.
So I would look again for consistency.
Yeah.
I appreciate the progression. And in all in team HR, for example, the first one, continue to execute. Yet other things we did in year one, those should also say, continue to execute staff engagement survey, continue to execute, so,
They don't look like they fell away.
right. But again, if it was in
Mhm.
one document, maybe that continue wouldn't be needed. I don't know,
Yeah.
But if we leave it in multiples, then yes, it helps delineate between what's first time around versus what's progression.
Gonna move us along. Connecting as community. I don't think anyone, I think this stays the same. Oh, no, there's a Dr. Berg talks about his idea to create this coalition. It's on the top of page 7 here on the screen. Develop a coalition of community, business, city. I'm not gonna read it to you, but the really goal is to strengthen the partnerships and think about what does a community district partnership look like and how does it strengthen our work with kids.
Any questions on this section? I have one.
Please.
Year 2, it also says we're conducting town hall meetings. Am I safe to assume this is now becoming a norm?
Mhm.
I like it.
Right.
Or is this a copy paste that was supposed to be omitted after the strategic plan is up and running, after or is this here?
Yep.
Is it here because, fill in the blank?
I think it's because after 3 years, it becomes what we do. But if we change the format, it's probably not needed.
Well, just to make sure, agreed.
Yep.
My big question though is, this is saying that we're going to implement it, town hall meetings every year.
Right.
I just want to make sure that's what we are truly saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
I know Dan likes that too.
Yeah. I think that's one of the frustrations of the public is they have an opportunity to speak to us, but they never get a response, per se. And this way they would be able
It'll
to.
be Q&A.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah. I think it's good. It's great.
And that's hard with any board because it's not the back and forth and the response comes by a phone call, by email, yet a lot of the emails aren't a personal you know, here, let's have a conversation, it's, here's my thought, you know, so then, okay, we can do a general response to all, or sometimes the president response, you know, it's just not the back and forth that I think community members are looking
Right.
for, so this is perfect, that at least it starts that, and maybe we find we need more. Maybe we find that it's the perfect amount, I don't know.
Right.
But that's where, you know, revising those strategies gives that open window.
Yes. We'll go to resource, again, that's business. You know, the new piece here is that budget timeline, right? Knowing that there might be some strategies or implications for a budget that we need to develop a different strategy, but right now, this is reflective of Sarah's input. And, facilities here, PRA still shows up, common school funds. I hope you were successful.
Was
And
not.
then, last, we did update a 10-year capital improvement plan, so that's something new as well, that shows up in year 2.
Another form of execution.
Questions? All right, I'm gonna put up year 3.
So for the sake of time for year 3, are there any major changes, instead of going section by section, because we kind of get the drift, we've made a lot of our commentary. Are there any major changes or things that we should be aware of? We understand the progression, we understand different pieces. Was there anything
I mean,
there?
Again, you'll see those 3 kind of things. It's either progression, it's the same, or it kind of drops off, right?
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
all right, I'll skip that if you have, again, if you
I'm
have,
fine with that, I think, yeah.
I'm good.
Someone has their
Yep.
hand up. Or
Then
that up.
I'm assuming that's a Craig hand.
May have just
Go
been-
ahead, Craig.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know, are we reaching the end of the meeting? I don't know if we are or not, I just, I lost the agenda for some reason. But, at least I just wanted to make a quick comment to say that, hey, I'm really impressed the level of detail, that the committee is going through with the staff on this, and so far, everything looks really good, like everything's been well thought through, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. Switch gears then, just show you some of the marketing pieces and talk through some of the marketing pieces that are forthcoming. And so,
While you're looking for that, thank you for all your time and energy in putting this together, because it cannot be a small feat by any means.
No,
Compared to what we've had,
right,
this was like starting from scratch in a hole,
Mhm.
if you will. So, thank you.
I can, while you're doing that, I just have kind of a vague question.
sure.
When, thinking back of when I first started on planning, I think it was my first year, we were still looking at goals, and we hadn't decided to kind of pull away from the previous strategic plan. And I think we call them check-ins, is that, Fred, do you remember, was that like strategic plan check-ins, and planning would, you know, we kind of would look at where are we going, how are we doing? Is that something still in the works? Is that, have you guys thought about how this is then going to be kind of as check-ins? You know, I'm assuming we don't just go, here is the plan, and then a
So-
year later go, how'd we do?
We haven't
Do you get what I'm
discussed
saying?
that
Is
yet,
that
and I'm
future?
sure that'll be a topic.
Yep.
But I can tell you, when I took over this role as chair, the board president at the time wanted me to do data check-ins at every meeting. And my comment to him was, there's no way you can do data check-ins at every meeting. You don't get progress on it. And so now, because of the structure that we have, where we're looking at forward data We only have that overarching data once a year, but we're getting data updates at regular board meetings. So our whole system
It's kind of.
has changed. So what's happened in the past has a very different look.
Mhm.
So your question kind of touches on that, but also, are we gonna be checking it? Yeah, we're checking it on multiple things. That's why we have 3 pillars,
Okay.
within our meetings. And if there's ever a topic, kind of like we do for our other committees, when we say, hey, looking at the future, did you get it? Looking at the future, do we have other items in there? And I put those into our document to kind of help organize those.
Mhm.
That's how we bring those things
Okay,
around.
okay, so
Or
it's
they
not
bring
gonna
those
be so I'm not saying it should be how it was, but it's just, I had this vision in my brain, how we were looking at a
But when you think about
implemented
this,
strategic plan.
looking at literacy and looking at math.
Right.
Those are ed services topics.
Right,
And so those are gonna come in that committee. Our drive as the planning committee is to kind of set the coursework for the other committees. Does that make sense?
mhm,
And so like we've got an HR component, we've got a fiscal component. So we're setting the pathway and we'll do some of that, but we're also handing it off to other committees as well, if that makes sense. And if I'm speaking it wrong, let me know. But that's my vision through this.
right,
And we'll definitely, what I see, continuing, especially a planning committee is, as we said, we have that data sharing at the board meetings. That's where student data will really come.
mhm,
And I see regular updates, especially our planning committee, about the progress on those strategies, right? We'll give you updates. Maybe we focus on academic excellence one time and just talk about, here's where we're at, here's where we're going. So we can give you updates around strategies. I think that's really appropriate here.
Well, like Jared and I were talking the other day, referendum, for example, we talked about how that's gonna move to fiscal for a time being and some of the work there, and there's some committee work.
Right.
But the communication part of it is still gonna reside in planning. So there's some shared things, there's some movement. It's just, when I've talked to people, and Craig mentioned this a couple of meetings ago, that, and I'm not quoting him directly, the gist of it is, this looks very different as a planning committee than what it did in years past.
not saying it's good or
And-
bad.
Right.
Just
It's
making sure that,
different. Yep.
and we kind of were on a lingo kind of because we kind of had narrowed down what we were gonna focus on.
Mhm.
But now we're coming back to a really big thing,
Well, and
so I
we've got,
don't want us to just get
Yep.
lost in translate,
we've
right?
got 2 really big things, and the good news is I'm very linear sequential and anal retentive about things.
Right.
That I'm not gonna let things fall, and there's times, hey, Jason, what about this? And hey, Jared, what about this? But that's my job,
Mhm.
that's my role, and if you think we're missing things, that's your job to say, hey, Diana as chair, or even non-committee members.
Right.
Putting those questions forward, as the group, like I appreciate Sam had the questions there. What I would love for us to be able to do in the future is to forward those to myself and Jason so they can get fused into the discussion piece. It just helped, but it's a learning process for all of us, to work in there. Does that make sense? There's no good, there's no bad, there's no critique. It's just, there might be things that other committee members or non-committee members think, well, oh, Jason didn't think about that. So it gives him time to prepare that and add it to the discussion instead of having to bring it back.
Mhm.
So just something else to think about.
I'm gonna just quickly show a few of the marketing materials and talk about some of the things that are forthcoming. And so this is just a draft newsletter article that the Donovan Group created. Melissa always takes it, reviews, revises, and then uses. So again, this is draft, right? But example of how we'll market that. Questions there?
Tina had one.
Please.
It was tied into a different piece, but it goes right along with this. And that is regarding the vision, that her statement is basically, we brought together the community, but the version that we ended with is different than the version that the community had. I'm just, if she was here, she'd be bringing up that comment, so I'm just bringing that up again because that was a statement there. Her bigger statement is, if that vision statement needed to be broader, why weren't they guided that it needed to be broader? That makes sense. And maybe this isn't the appropriate time in this piece, maybe this discussion piece comes up later. Since we're talking about the mission and vision statement, my commentary, my thought on that was that we were guided as a board then, once the community brought it to the table, that was never the end goal. And I think that piece should have been communicated better from the community standpoint. I went to half the meetings, not all of them, and maybe it was and I missed it. Because my thought was, well, the community brings it to us, this is our mission and vision statement. But at the same token, then it's like, no, that was their suggestion to us. We as the board
It was a piece
finalized
of the
that.
process, yeah.
Mhm.
And clearly in those meetings, Jared said repeatedly that the board can take this, we can, whatever
That's
you
correct.
create,
You're right.
we can come back, they can change it, they can throw everything out and come back with something entirely new. He said that
Okay.
repeatedly in those meetings.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do remember that now that you said that. Thank you.
Lori Miller reiterated
Yep.
that.
So I just wanted to bring, because that may come up through community members and just to clarify that piece here, because it's gonna come out in the newspaper, so that's why I brought it up now, that if it does, then we at least have that. Thank you.
I'll show you some posters. These are drafts as well. I think I might need Tyler to come to these.
And I'm terrible. I had all my tabs open because sometimes I struggle with
Yes.
connection,
I know.
going from home to here, here to
Well,
home.
especially when you have meetings day after day, I find sometimes I open it, I'm like, I have 3 meetings of tabs.
Well, it's not so, right, but it's not so bad if I'm a participant, but when you're the chair and you can't get there, then I get frazzled.
So here's, I think we've seen a version of this, and so this is infographic that would be turned into a poster, which also is linked, but it's really similar. But it shows, I think what's important and exciting for me is that you see tradition is a column, and the word tradition is in a different font than innovation, right? So there's like little pieces here that are unique to our strategic plan. And so if you look at the words in those pillars, they change over time. Transformation is different font. And so this is, again, a version of our infographic and poster. Donovan Group is also translated, so we have a draft of that as well.
I have a question.
Please.
I know the poster, we have it, the 2 versions. Is the strategic plan also going to have I'm
Absolutely.
assuming this is Spanish.
Yep.
It will be in
Yep.
both. Okay,
Everything
good.
will be, yep.
And I'm
Absolutely.
assuming what the link, the scan link, is that gonna take you to the actual strategic plan?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
And so the poster is the same thing, right? Some things that are forthcoming is that Donovan Group is working on right now. We'll have a template for those building action plans that I mentioned that align with the strategic plan, the marketability of it, the alignment to our goals. Well, they're creating that. They're creating that dashboard, as I mentioned. And the dashboard will really be 2 pieces. The dashboard will help us keep track of those student goals, but it'll also be a progress monitor for the strategies. And so they're developing that dashboard. They call it a kinetic topography video. Those are some fancy words, right? But the examples I've seen is they show that Donovan Group is going to create a video that kind of shows, like, I think they use, I can't think of the word. Get a picture of Watertown from the aerial view, right? And they fuse in the strategic plan and kind of building on the culture and the history of our community. And so building that video. They'll have a flip book that we can use in promotional if we're having it out in schools here. If we go to a conference, we can hand those out, so it's a quick informational flip book. And they have templates that, they sent me a template yesterday, I think, like a slideshow template. So it has all the marketing, you put the content, so all the literature will be common. And so these are some of the pieces that they're working on as well.
Who's doing the video?
Donovan
that-
Group.
The Donovan
Yeah.
group is doing that?
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was a way to utilize students.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know drones and they're techie,
Yeah.
so I just thought maybe it was an opportunity.
But they'll bring, all the, I don't know if all, but no, it won't be all. They're working right now on the fact sheet and the template, social media templates, and that's in October. November, they're working on some things, and then by the end of December, we'll have it all.
So my question, Dan, sorry, Dan
Or
first.
just if I'm a parent who's moving into this area and I work in Milwaukee, I could have my kids go into any school I really wanted. How are we marketing that? If they Googled, the schools in the area, what would our presentation look like?
And I think, I guess I would point to our website, right? Our website that Melissa's working hard on, and will also be aligned with the strategic plan, right? I think that's the main platform. I think, I've looked at data from websites in previous districts. You see the district website is hit for events, right? People want to know like what's going on, lunch menu, and then general search, right? And so that general search is an opportunity for us to really hit that marketing piece. So, Melissa's work is integral to that as well.
Every school selection that I'm familiar with was because they wanted this wrestling coach or this football coach, you know what I'm saying? Athletics is very important in that mix. And I know we talk about music and we have a great music program, but, that's something else that we could market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As many people as search is as many topics as what
Yeah.
brings them, right?
Right.
Your wrestling coach is my music, your
Right.
whatever, right?
So I'm gonna bring us back
it's
to
really
the
hard.
strategic plan though, because that's a separate, it's a marketing piece, but it goes
Yeah.
marketing in a different direction.
Sure, thank you.
My question here, you just shared with us some things that you're gonna be working through, which is awesome. My question is, from a planning committee standpoint, do we need to put eyes on those before they go public? Do those need to go to the board before they go public? And if so, then right now we're planning to meet in November. We had said at the last meeting, we weren't gonna meet in December unless we needed it. Well, if that's the case, that we need to put eyes on these before they go public, then we need to put together a December meeting, and that'll come later on. But my bigger question right now is, do we as a planning committee, and maybe this is a Fred question, do we as a planning committee need to see and approve all of this before it goes out?
Not approved, make a recommendation.
Make a recommendation, sorry.
The
What's
final version, I guess I would look to the committee on this, is the final version has to get approved by the board.
So,
If you're comfortable with the versions as they move along, that you don't feel that you need to see it again before the board gets to it, you don't think there'll be substantive changes, send it up.
right, but right now, for example, we have a fact sheet and a social media, I think you mentioned two things coming in October that we haven't seen yet. And they're coming then board meeting, so would they need to go through committee before they go to the board?
In November.
So they would need to go to, so November, yep. Now, we also have other things that you said November. If those aren't, November's a quicker timeline because of Thanksgiving, we're pushed up a week. So it's like the teen week in November is our meeting. So if that isn't ready by then, we're not scheduling until January. So it sounds like we may need to put a December meeting in. But my bigger piece here is we need to be conscientious of the timeline to make sure these things are ready for the scheduled planning committee meeting.
I guess one question, Appreciate the question. And one wondering I have is, does the planning committee, I want to keep you in the loop and love your feedback, but does the planning committee need to see every marketing piece before it goes to the full
That was
board?
my question, that was my precursor question. Does it need to come here before it goes to the board?
And so just to back up a little bit, I'm hoping that on October 28th, I'm planning to have a really clean copy of year 1, 2, and 3 that reflects the feedback we received tonight, right? No substantial changes in the word, right? The plans are not changing. the
And
way
this
it
is, since
looks.
we've put eyes on it, we've given suggestions, I feel comfortable saying, okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
I would also be bringing, the poster and infographic. I will also be bringing, depending on your feedback, the survey question, right? Questions. Pause there. Then the question is, again, I have this chart here from Donovan saying fact sheets, social media graphic templates would be done in October. I'm thinking that would be ready for 28th. So again, the same way to ask the same question, different way to ask the same question is, do you want to see every piece of marketing before it goes to the full board?
Do we need to see, that's
You
the
don't see
question.
marketing for anything else on Facebook.
I'm just
You
asking,
know what I'm saying? Like, I think we really need to just make sure that.
I'm
like,
okay with it, I
The
was
plan is
just,
what we're approving.
Yeah.
I don't think we're approving every,
I agree.
you know what I mean? Like Melissa maybe throwing something out there and
I agree.
I don't think we
Jason brought
approve
you
that.
tonight is the core of the strategic
That's
Right.
what
Correct.
we need is
I
the.
need to see every button they're gonna post and everything like this. I don't think so. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if the board needs to see every piece of that. But to see the direction you're moving in with graphics and things like this, so we get general sense of approval for the board and how it all wraps together is a plan. I think that's worthy. And then from there, the board can make that decision.
so
We'll keep you in
then,
the loop, right?
Yeah, right.
I would like to see that reflected in the minutes, just so that way we did discuss that at this point in time, so if there's ever a question by anyone going back, it's reflected
Sounds good.
there. Perfect.
Thank you. Yep. And so, if I can do this again, I'll share you, real quickly, the Studer questions that were asked.
We're asked past tense,
Yes.
thank you.
Those weren't done this year. That was what, the end of last year?
Right, so, I should know this, but I don't know the number of years that we worked with Studer. But we have communicated, we're ending our partnership.
Okay,
And so-
it's been quite a few
was.
years.
Yep,
That's
so-
right. Yeah.
Last time we talked, there was a request to see the questions, so this is it.
Yes.
So these are the 20 questions that I think at least 5 years that we asked our students, grades 4 through 12, I believe. And we called it the Student Engagement Survey. So these are the questions. And again, this past tense, right? We have already communicated with Studer. Our partnership is sunset.
When did they last take this?
Spring of 2024,
Okay, spring.
end of last year.
Are we just done with it? Or is that something that we're still gonna have with data?
We're
I
moving
don't
To
know the
kind of look
question.
at where, since we have with the student engagement, because we've been trying to be data driven, right? And I know that our surveys were kind of a part of that, trying to monitor, we're doing it with the staff. I know that now, like with our strategic plan, it's gonna take some time to get back onto a data track when it comes to the students. Does that mean this is lost? Does that make sense? Are you following me from the spring, or can we use that still this year to try to,
We're using it to,
does that make, yeah,
Yep, principals, like I mentioned, have a literacy, math, and student engagement survey or goal.
okay.
Many of our principals are relying on this
On
data.
this, still
Yep.
from, even though it was last year, and even though this isn't gonna be the continuous, that's, I think, what I would think you.
And longitudinally, if we ever look at longitudinal data, we'll have to put an asterisk, 2024,
Right.
25 school year, the survey questions were changed, right?
And I do like the fact that as we move into our core values, that the questions are more aligned with each of
I
those
agree.
values.
We'll stop sharing, if that's okay, and show you the proposed. And so, gonna go back here. This is it. Okay, so, just the historical and context is that, after our last planning committee, I reached out to school perceptions, in part because we use them for our staff engagement survey, so they know our culture. I've worked with them in the past, have had great experiences. And so the initial contact was, hey, we have a strategic planning. We have some core values that are new. Our working definitions have been completed. The idea is, can we align student engagement questions to those core values? So that was the prompt. And so I met with them 2 or 3 times subsequent, and these are the questions that they are suggesting under each of our core values. Told that I'm bringing it here tonight. They said, we like all feedback. It's tough if we wordsmith or change the words.
That's what I was gonna ask.
They don't, it changes the meaning of the questions. These are from scientists, right? Survey builders, not me. If we don't like a question, we can get rid of it, but changing a question, they said, we really don't, that really, I don't know the terminology, it doesn't align, it invalidates to some level the surveys.
Is it, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
you first.
And you're probably gonna say, I know, when we originally, because we do this with the staff, and I'm assuming that has to do with when we put our own, change the wordings, if I remember correctly, we're not gonna have data
That's
beyond
important.
our school
That's
district.
very true, that's in part, yeah.
So what I was gonna ask, if that is the case, while we are, it's gonna take us some time to get some data for the district, we could immediately start seeing data as a, what's the average?
As
So
a norm.
it is definitely something that we right away, even though we'll be in year 1, we would still be able to be like, ooh, we're really high on this point, or we're really insufficient in this point, and that may help us, or you guys, not us,
We're
kind of
taking
see
that.
where we're at right, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
oh, this is what, when you're looking at districts across the state or wherever it is,
It's a
it
great
seems,
question.
so I do think that there is going to be some immediate data.
Yes, I believe every question here is a question that school perception uses somewhere else. So yes, the answer is yes, we'll get some comparative data.
Okay.
Great question.
Dan?
Did I miss something with this Studer thing? Because I assumed this was gonna be a part of the strategic plan going forward, these survey questions. I mean, did I miss?
The Studer.
But
I can
Studer's
give some
out, school
No, I
perceptions is
get
in.
that, but I mean, when I read through this, I didn't see any notation saying that.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yep. So we communicated about Studer and our ending of partnership earlier in the spring. And so
Okay.
I didn't highlight that, I apologize, right?
Okay.
And so we had a partnership with Studer that was really 2 parts. One was coaching with our administrators, so they would come to cabinet meetings and then do virtual meetings individually with school principals about their goals and their progress. The second part of that was a student engagement survey and a parent engagement survey. And so our representative from Studer left Studer. We had a discussion internally, do we want to continue with them? The answer was no, we communicated. So that was early in the spring, and we shared that. And so now we've committed to an engagement survey. We don't have a vendor right now. So I, after our last discussion, reached out to school perceptions and said, hey, here's an idea, can you help us? And this reflects their, and again, school perception, does our staff engagement survey. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you have one other question, and you may not know this? I would be curious then if, and whether that would be at planning or as wherever that would fall. I know that there is a very broken down that school perception gives for the staff survey. I would expect that we would be getting that same type of data breakdown for the student,
I can bring that to Jenny.
which I,
That leads to where my questions were going. This is technically an HR
right.
piece.
Well-
School, you know, staff and student surveys fall under the HR purview.
student
And
survey.
so they both have gone through that. They've looked at data. So I can double,
I can't imagine that students would go to, I thought that's,
Julie's gonna work in cooperation with
In
Margaret.
cooperation.
but
Look and see.
Margaret is oversees any FERPA
okay.
considerations, so it would still fall under her purview. at least.
so,
But anything you
Right,
would
it's
do with the
student-
survey
right.
would probably be ed service.
correct. So,
So I don't know if
What-
it needs to
where
go,
do-
you
yeah,
don't need to
so-
go to two.
so do we need to look to see where does that delineate? That was where my question was.
And I think that's.
Yep. My second piece in this, looking at the questions themselves, is there are duplicate questions that fall under different areas. And if we're asking a question such as, when I accomplish or learn a new skill, I push myself to learn something new. Integrity, perseverance. I don't understand how that's an integrity piece. You know, how does it, you know, I'd be answering it from the perseverance standpoint. So I guess when we look at there's other ones that fall in two different areas.
Mhm.
How do you delineate where that sits?
Yeah.
Is it always, you know, because at first I'm like, well, that really should say I try my hardest. Well, then, you know, it's both integrity and perseverance, but the way it's worded, it really doesn't, I don't understand how it fits integrity, but I'm not trying to nickel and dime a particular question. I just don't understand when they're duplicate like that, saying the exact same thing, how it fits under two different headings. Does that make sense?
It
Did I
does.
question my-
Yeah.
I would say two things. One is, the real answer is, I don't know how that fits, right? That's the work of school
Correct.
perceptions. The second piece I would say though, is what the last time I met with them, when this was kind of like coming to fruition, is I simply read the definitions to them, right? And so they're on the screen and I'm saying, under empathy, do we have something that aligns to considering, understanding others' perspectives, creating a caring school? And so that was my work. I just kept reading and said, I'm just
Yeah,
giving you
no,
the
Perfect.
context. Yep.
It's just now as we sift through these.
Yep.
Then maybe we find, hey, they're not in two areas, it's just one area and.
It's great,
This is a draft, I get it,
Yep, yep.
and it's just feedback there.
I just think, for context, right?
Is it gonna be, is this how the survey would be presented? Would it
No,
be?
No,
No,
these
it's
are just the
literally just gonna
questions.
be the questions, but it's not gonna be grouped in
Right. They
we're
align,
testing you on empathy. That's not how this is
Right.
gonna look.
they'll align it behind the scenes.
Perfect.
right? So you get a
I
report that
assumed
says,
that,
under the
but-
empathy, here's the index and the questions. Yep. Similar to the staff engagement survey.
What grade levels are we talking about here?
What we've talked about is 4 through 12.
Would they have the same questions every year?
Traditionally, yes.
That's how it always
Yeah.
is done.
So you get that cohort data, right? And longitudinal.
So here are Tina's questions. What's the specific plan to do with this information? And we kind of asked that earlier.
Mhm.
I think this is still formulating in that.
Yep.
So I just wanted to address that here. And then the second piece is, and I'm just gonna read it almost
Yep.
verbatim to what she has, is how many times do we need to repeatedly ask kids fill out a survey? For example, she used the one about discipline that says the schools aren't consistent about discipline. It's not really a student issue, it's more, this doesn't say that, this kind of gets in a different line, but I think her bigger piece is making sure we do something with the data. And so I guess I'd be looking at an upcoming, not near future, but somewhere down the road, planning meeting of how are we going to utilize this after we collect it? What's going to be done? I know that we've collected some student data in the past and here's where it is. Okay, what do we do with it then? And some schools did more with it than other schools did. And what's the plan for consistency? And I know we're not there yet, but I just wanted to foreshadow what I'm looking for from the district's perspective. And if you guys
I
don't
agree,
see
and
the
that is
same way.
why I was interested on, I feel like if we're going to get the school perceptions breakdown like they do for the staff, that excites me because it is, because the staff comes every year to HR. Students has fallen kind of off a little bit. So I agree, and I think.
Any feedback about the questions?
Do we, and I know that we're going towards a strategic plan, and I don't think that the survey originally was, when we started student surveys, whenever that was, I imagine this was I don't know if it was linked to our past, it was literally just to kind of rate to see what students. Are we missing any of that rating or that, you know what I mean? Like, I guess I didn't see, are we missing anything going to our core values, which is good, but are we missing anything that we may have been getting out of those other surveys? And maybe that's a question for the building teachers or administrators. Do they feel like they're not gonna have a guard on something when we're focused on, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be focused on our core values, but should we have a few more other, maybe that aren't part of the core values? I don't know, because I feel like they would fall somewhere.
The building principals have not seen this yet because
Okay.
I just got it from School Perceptions on Friday. And I
Okay.
wanted to get it up.
Yeah.
But, that's a question I can ask.
And it's great because we do have both sets, we have the old questions, we have the new, and are there any they feel are missing that
Yeah.
need to come
We're
over?
valuable, that they may be like, oh,
Mhm.
now we're not gonna
That's
know
a great
what the students, because student input is very important. I've always said that we need to be asking sometimes more, talking to kids. So I think this is a really great, I don't want to miss out on if we use it.
Right.
And I don't know how well that's really, and maybe that's been happening at the building level, maybe not, we haven't seen it.
When
So-
these core values were first presented, I tried to find things that, what would be a question, what would be something that wouldn't fall under those 5? I can't find something,
Mhm.
that's not to say there's not something out there. And I didn't spend hours and hours doing it,
Right.
but it's a pretty good umbrella.
Well, for instance, I feel that there are healthy food choices for me to eat at lunch. We're not asking.
Right.
It's a different type of question that we are now not gonna have that input. You get what and I'm not saying just that, or I feel safe on the bus. I mean, it's some outside things and it's a
I
different
get it.
reasoning of why we ask those questions. These questions are very focused on our core values.
But those other 2 questions don't fit with the strategic plan.
They don't, but that, we don't, I was
Say that
wondering,
5 times.
does that mean that we shouldn't be doing it? I don't know.
And those are great questions. And we have more time with this. We have all the time we want with anything, right? But we have more time with this than the
Then
rest
getting
of
the
this.
stretch-
Because
Exactly.
this is really for spring, right?
Okay.
And so this is an
Perfect.
initial feedback. We definitely bring it to the board on October 28th, but I feel like this will come back to planning
Okay.
again, right?
Mhm.
Because again, principals haven't seen this, their feedback is important.
And my thought on that question that you were just, those 2 that you brought up, I don't know why that would only be asked once a year. That might be things that a teacher can ask within her classroom or his classroom.
Mhm.
Just in a casual morning meeting, different things.
But it's not gonna be any data to,
A week capture as a
right.
district.
I mean, what is that teacher gonna do if he says, no, my
Do we need that?
lunch talk today, that they can. That's an opinion by one student. That doesn't mean it's not.
But if there's
It could have been a
multiple
really
ones
good
there and
lunch.
then they bring it,
I
anyway,
know.
it gets a ball rolling.
Yeah,
But yes,
yeah, yeah.
different conversation, different
Mhm.
time, agreed.
Just my biggest thing is what I think, something to think about is these questions for when we're talking about our core values. Now I have to find it again. They're very much about the student, which that's what we're trying to do, right? Like the core values are, You know, are you trying your best at school? Do you, you know, feel safe answering questions that, you know, with the empathy? I like helping others, but we're not asking them, it goes beyond just them and their values and their core values. Their school environment, there's a lot more that makes sure, and this changes avenues. This is making sure that we're hitting those high level things and making sure that kids are feeling good and have some good core values. But there's more beyond making, we need to be checking in to make sure that those other things are being, so I
From the,
don't know what that.
from the HR perspective, when we built the staff survey, these are ones that transcend to other districts. Maybe we have some of our own added that are just Watertown specific, and that's what you're really referring to.
Right. One other question, and I'm not trying to drag it on.
No.
Are
Good.
these, I know with school perceptions, with the staff surveys, there is some other things that are asked. I think it asks what building level you're at, or I don't know the specifics because I don't have that in front of me, but it does ask, you know, so it's kind of running data on different things. So it's obviously staff and students, there's different things. Is this going to have any monitoring of the, you know, fourth through?
Yep.
fifth,
It'll
or-
ask your school, your grade level. We'll make a decision about demographic data that we ask,
Okay,
but when we get more finalized, you'll see it, right?
Okay.
This is just an initial, what you're
Questions.
thinking. I am meeting with school perceptions next week to bring them the feedback. Principals need to see this, but we'll bring the full piece before we execute it. We have time, right? We want to do this, we usually do it in April, I think, so we have some time.
okay.
The teachers, that they put their names down?
No.
No?
It's anonymous.
Well, I saw a survey that had teachers' names on it. That's not,
Not the school perceptions.
okay. And could we add a question and say, are there any questions you wish we would have asked?
I can ask of the survey.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, sorry. We have this up, so it's hard to see your hand, so thank you for jumping in.
Sure, not a problem. When it comes to like integrity, I guess I understand that you're kind of working within the framework of what Perceptions has to offer. And, but I just kind of wonder if maybe there's something a little bit more deeper under like the integrity section. For instance, like for like a question of the nature of, when I witness bullying, I feel comfortable going to a teacher that I trust to address the situation, or something of that nature. You know, I mean, we kind of have to try to get to some of these other core issues that the students are experiencing that are important to them, but yet also try to understand the level of integrity that they have as well.
Yeah,
I
that's
get
great
what you're
feedback.
saying,
I will
yeah.
bring it to school perceptions, right? Again, this will come back repeatedly before we execute,
And this is
before
just,
we implement.
yeah, this is just this is just the first look at what school
Yeah.
perceptions has, but I think it's pretty clear through this discussion today that it's a good start, but we need more,
Mhm.
or
Absolutely.
we need depth.
Yeah.
More isn't, because I don't want to have more questions,
Mhm.
a ton more, just depth to them.
Mhm.
I will meet with school perceptions again. I'll share this with principals, get their feedback, and then after those two steps are done, I'll bring it back to planning.
Okay.
Great.
Is there
Thank you for all
anything
your
else that you need to share with us tonight?
feedback. Not tonight.
So then I have a couple questions, unless you guys, just to
Only
wrap
On
things up.
survey, what did you say about the parent, we don't know who's doing a parent survey yet?
We do not have a
Okay.
vendor.
That's okay, that's what I thought you said, I just wanted to get it in my head.
So just wrapping up the strategic planning discussion piece. As the chair, and I'm speaking on behalf of you all without conferring with you all first, so I apologize. But, I'm wondering if you could share with us just briefly, because we had thought this meeting would go an hour. We're well past, but we've gone through this very in-depth.
You should
I
know us
appreciate-
better than that.
But I appreciate the depth and the feedback that was given. I think it was very valuable and worth our time.
Mhm.
So my question, I have a few of them for you, Jason. I'm putting you on the spot now. How do you feel the Donovan Group has fared for you in this whole strategic planning process? And can you kind of give us a little insight on what they're doing to help along the way? Because we referred to, the Donovan Group's gonna do this, and they're helping us with this. Can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of what they're doing, what they're gonna, you've alluded to some of the projects they're going to be working on, but in like 2 minutes or less, a quick elevator
Yeah.
speech?
I think there's two parts to your question. One is, how I view their work, how it's impacted, and then what they're doing now. Is that
Yep.
right? And so when I think about the first question, I think about the fact that, at one point I talked to Jared about, our first RFP came back with hundreds of $1,000 quotes. And I was worried. And I said, well, I can probably lead this, won't be as professional or great as others, but I can try. And he said, no, we don't want to do that because we want to be a part of the process versus facilitating. And so what I appreciate about Donovan Group is that they allowed our community, our district, me, to be part of the process versus leading, right? And I think, looking at the community, as Jared talked about with the staff on the first day back, is that there were opinions on all sides, right? And I think the Donovan Group did a nice job of bringing some unity to the conversations about what's in the best interest of kids. We're all in the same boat if we want to do right by kids. And so 2 pieces to that answer. One is I appreciate them being external to allow us, all of us, to be engaged, and 2, bringing people together. And we saw that through growth in numbers, some compromise, some discussions that were fruitful. And what they're doing now is changed now, right? They, to some level, got us to a certain point, mission, vision, core values, all those pieces. And it had to turn to our internal group to come up with those strategies. Donovan Group can't say, you're gonna do the rapid cycle feedback. We had to do that. And so now their partnership looks different. And the difference is they're creating literature for us, making it pretty, getting our feedback on does it reflect our goals, giving us examples of other districts. And so their work now is transformed from leading to behind the scenes, creating documents, giving us feedback on our documents, asking critical questions, preparing us for these conversations and other conversations. Valuable and valued, but different at this point.
And that leads to my next question, which you just started to touch on. Do you feel we're getting our money's worth out of it? Or do you think, hey, with a little extra work, we probably could have done this on our own?
And, looking back, I'm glad Jared said no, right?
Said no to doing it on your own?
Right, for a number of reasons. One is again, being part of the process versus leading was valuable for me. And without a partnership of Donovan giving me examples, guiding me about next steps, creating the tools, I think Melissa is just not there yet, right? I find value and I think the dollars are well spent.
So Jared has extended the Donovan services, as we know, through December. Past that time, do you anticipate, I'm not asking for a hardcore yes or no, but do you anticipate needing continued support for them? I mean, I have no idea what you need. I mean, I was happy to see through December what's there that kind of gave a time, like an idea. But beyond that, I'm sure they only gave December because that's what we've paid for. But beyond that, what kinds of things would we need? So do we need it past then? And if so, what do you think we need it for?
Yeah, I guess from a purely strategic planning lens, the answer is I don't know, right? And I say that because one of the conversations, if we go back to the Studer question, was why did we end their partnership? We felt as an internal group that the value they were adding, the conversations with the principals about goals, that we could do that, and we could do that well, right? And so some of the pieces that I envision of a strategic planning, kind of what's next phases, I think that we have the folks to do that and the capacity to do that. That's me being ignorant, right? I don't know what it looks like in January, but I'm confident that right now, or I feel confident that if all these pieces come together as we hope, that I can, and with the help of our team and internal team, we can carry the conversations forward. Again, not knowing all the components. And I guess one piece, we talk about referendum, I think one piece we can think about is how Donovan Group has a pretty good grasp of our community, where they're at, where we've been, where we want to go through the strategic planning. So again, there might be value in thinking about Donovan Group to kind of take on that role. Still helping us with strategic planning, but then shifting their focus to referendum. So that's an option.
And that leads me to the future agenda planning, because that was supposed to be part of our discussion tonight. But it was inadvertently left off, accidentally, whatever. B, we wouldn't have ever gotten to it anyway, because we're now almost 2 hours in. So I'm glad that it was inadvertently, accidentally left off. But that will then be a topic, that'll be the primary topic at our November planning meeting, is do we extend the Donovan Group or not? And knowing now what I know, I don't know if we would have been ready to have that discussion tonight anyway, because we don't see things in the final form, and that's what the board had asked for, is show us the finished product to see, are we getting our money's worth?
Mhm.
And so I think after our October, I was hoping we'd have that today. We were both hoping we'd have that today. But life happens, things happen, and I would rather get it 2 weeks later and have it be exactly what we anticipate than not. So we can anticipate that coming as a discussion topic in November.
And I think, as I said, my ignorance says, yeah, I can do it, right? But I don't know what's next. And so I think there's value and probably strategery in thinking about that next month or even the month after, right? We'll have a better handle on what the marketing pieces look like. We'll have a better handle on what that dashboard looks like, where we're at with referendum planning, and have a firmer grasp on the needs moving forward.
So just so you all know, the questions that I just asked at the end, Jason had no idea. And typically we
accurate
discuss
statement.
these ahead of time, but I wanted to get the off the cuff, unprepared response. In case it was like, this is really, I wanted us to see exactly how he's handling that. So typically we have that behind the scenes conversation. We didn't have that with those questions. And I did that on purpose. I'm sorry I put you in the hot seat, but I'm not
So
sorry.
I'm not prepared to ask any further questions for
No,
Donovan,
and I
because
wasn't-
it wasn't on.
No, and
you know
I
what
wasn't
mean?
anticipating that. I just wanted to see, okay, regarding strategic planning, we've talked a lot about what Donovan Group has done for us today.
Right.
So it was just my way to close the conversation today, but also put some guidance out there as for, thinking next time, hey, we're gonna have these conversations next time. It wasn't going to be
Right.
focusing on Donovan Group.
Do you feel that we'll have a better, do you think we need to wait till later to talk more about Donovan? Because I know you said there'll be pieces in the next couple months that will help us.
We have to do November unless we're meeting it, because Donovan's only contracted through December.
I think November is a sweet spot for
So-
a lot of reasons. One of them is the contract, right? But I think we'll have a firm grasp of what the comprehensive strategic plan piece looks like.
Mhm.
I'll have a firmer grasp on what I may need from them, if anything, right? Nothing is an option, and we'll just be in a better spot.
And that would be something to prepare then, is what do you need? What do they think, what benefits? Because they gave us that overall that they could do. And some of it, frankly, when you give them a whole gift box, you don't always use everything in the gift box.
Right.
So
Did Donovan, with the strategic plan of what you brought, like, let's say, looking at year one and it's pretty spiffier, that was Donovan helping with that one. They just haven't spiffed up 2 and 3.
Yeah.
That was because I just finished 2 and 3 last week, meeting I met with every director individually.
So when you say they spiffed, did they change any of it or just put it in an actual? organized document, but you actually did, you and the team, are you the ones that actually came up with the
The strategies.
strategies and?
We came up with strategies based on examples that were shown. And then Donovan Group is also part of our internal team.
Okay,
So they're part of it, giving feedback.
okay,
So part of it all along the way, and did the spiffing up.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I just think it's, because the credit needs to go and.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jason and the team were, you know what I mean? And that's saying, so it's valuable to know what input was
Right.
given.
It's hard for Donovan to say, do rapid cycle feedback, right? So the strategies came for our team with feedback, with examples, with ideas along the way, and then they made it spiffy.
And I like how you described it. They were leading for this part. They're behind the scenes here, but you left out that they've been working side by side as well.
Yep,
So it's
absolutely.
been
Yeah.
a gradual release of things,
Yeah.
so awesome.
There's a comment from Craig,
Yep.
it's been there for a while, so I apologize, but just take a moment.
I can't read it. I don't have glasses on. Can you read it out loud, please?
I absolutely agree that every piece of marketing isn't
Oh.
necessary to be approved by the board regarding the strategic plan. But I really appreciate the question. It demonstrates that the administration cares about the board, thinks about moving forward. Kudos to the administration for gesturing good faith. So
Cool,
I just didn't want to lose that.
thank you. Anything you have for additional, well, any action items we had moving forward?
I think the action items are really around the student engagement survey, right? I'll meet with school perceptions, I'll get feedback from principals and others, and then when it's more finalized, I'll bring it back to the team for sure.
So is an action item, well, an action item is to finish spiffing up,
Absolutely.
but was an action item to put it into one document?
Yeah, I have notes, I don't know if they're all action items, right? But I took notes of all the feedback, started with superintendent check-in, not evaluation, right? Post-secondary, clean it up with definitions table. Core valued, we need to further develop core values in year 2 and 3. Specify IXL and math. Create a different format combining 1, 2, and 3 and lessening the need for repeats. Could we put dates for town hall surveys, etc.? I've talked to Sarah about ESSER or remove Act 20. How does that feed into that? There's the year 24-25, leave blank, 25-26 goal. Infuse versus implement. Student engagement survey results. I'll talk to Jenny about that. So I have those.
So the student engagement survey, that's an action item. The looking at the possibility of moving it to one document is an action item, but all the intricate changes are not.
Right. Yeah.
It's just trying to get into the habit that if it doesn't show up in the minutes as an act,
Right, then
these are just
there's
my
no
way
accountability of what to do.
of moving, yeah.
Appreciate it.
And then anything else for future agenda that you see?
Other than student engagement, I don't know if I'll be ready for it in November,
No.
but when it is, it'll come back for sure.
And I have other things that, I don't know if they're gonna come November or not. But we started talking about a new member orientation tool. Fred and I have that on our docket to talk mid-October. That needs to happen at either the November or the January meeting, so that way it can come here. We have that on our radar. It'll come at one of the two. It just depends how full one agenda is versus the other. It's not super pressing, but gives us time to bring it. And then we want to give at least one more, so that would be March, to come back if there's revisions at the absolute latest for the second go around if needed. You were gonna say,
I was thinking board meetings, not
okay?
planning committee meetings, and so it's
Okay.
good.
Another item that will come up at our next meeting next month is when we look at the superintendent's summative evaluation. If you, and you don't recall this because you weren't part of this last time, but the rest of us would recall, that's a multiple meeting scenario. So just be aware that that'll be December, January, or a combination of sorts. So more information on that will be forthcoming. I have to sit down with Jared and kind of look and talk through what that is, because We're not wholeheartedly doing the DAPES process, but we are doing, you know, so do we need to take 3 meetings? I'm working through that, and I'll talk with the guys at CISA, and I'll bring more information back, but just know that that's coming. And then, lastly, there are some board operations policies. I need to go through them to see, have those already been approved the first round in Neola? Some of them have, some of them haven't. And do we need to put eyes, are there any commentaries that we need to take and put suggestions to policy while it's still in the works for changes, as opposed to after the fact? So a lot of those have been done. There were a couple one-offs. I think they're
mostly
done.
If you look on policy agenda from last night, there is a timeline and it shows you what.
Yep.
So that may
So I
be
think it's
helpful.
February is the ones that these come through. I have 4 of them.
Right, and that can change, right?
Potential,
Because
yep.
it just depends on what they get through, but it may be worth.
But these are
looking at
forthcoming.
that.
So if you happen to my reason for bringing it up is if you happen to stumble across a policy for whatever reason, and, oh, this is kind of a board operations piece. Oh, this, you know, we might want to consider looking at this more closely, bring it to this committee. So, you know, to put eyes through it, because you take it to planning and policy.
I think it's supposed to go to policy.
The way it was worded is if there's something that comes, we can have a conversation and then make planning committee suggestions to policy.
To policy.
Yep, it goes to, the changes go to policy, but if there's something like, that's a board operation, one person doesn't, you know, how does blah, blah, blah affect what happens? I don't have an example in front of me, but.
So are you talking about if there's something that was already approved in the new Neola?
I will take a look through those to see, like, we came across the ones that, for onboarding. I stumbled across after the fact. It had already been approved in Neola, but we added the words "or designee."
Okay.
So that's something that was a quick and easy, but it still has to go through first read and second read. So the thing is, if we stumble across something now
Mhm.
that we can save that additional first read, second read piece, I'm not trying to do extra work. But there was one that was no match to Neola, there was something else, and I have those recorded.
But
If you have something where it's just changing 2 words like that, you can take a motion at the full board meeting to bypass the traditional first and second read and just do a flat approval of the policy change at the board meeting.
How come we didn't do that one?
I don't
We don't need
feel
a
like that,
discussion.
yeah. I don't
It's within the
think that's-
policy. We can
Whatever.
do that, yeah.
That's fine.
Can I
So,
chime in
Anyone-
really quick on that?
Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead,
please.
Craig.
I would definitely encourage I mean, I don't want to get into a full-blown discussion, of course, but if it, I think it's always within board purview. Any board member should be looking through those policies, and if you see, we're not perfect, so if you see that there's something that got missed that needs to be addressed, you know, at the final alignment especially, please make note of it so that we can do that as a policy committee.
Perfect.
So, thank you.
Yep.
It
Anything
seems
else?
so long ago
I
that we
know.
hit those, and we really it was a kind of new process when we hit a lot of those, so we're learning as we
Right.
go.
And that's just, if you stumble on it, that's my only purpose in bringing it up here. There's
I
two,
understand. I
there's a
was-
couple.
Not
Yep.
understanding what you were
Yep.
saying, so now I get
There's
it.
Anything else?
Would strategic planning be on the full board for, as a resolution, or how would we want that?
For October?
The strategic plan, that does have to go as resolution, doesn't it?
I mean, is this the final version?
I was gonna say, I thought,
If this is the final version, then you need to have it as full resolution.
That will be determined by the marketing, the marketing materials, the content won't change.
And whether it's October or November, but by November,
Yep.
at the latest, it would have to be.
Yep.
I would say,
Jared's gonna want that because he's gonna start talking about the referendum. and
Sure,
correct.
Like, so you want this in place.
my goal is by October. So,
Excellent.
and we're scheduled next for November 6th, is that right? 5:30 p.m.
yeah, that's right.
That should have been a regularly
Right.
scheduled.
Yes.
I'm looking at October.
Yes.
Thank you very much for
Um,
your time and feedback.
We didn't officially adjourn yet, so
Policy is planning on meeting after planning. Is that going to be feasible? Because I can relate that back to the policy committee. That was something I was supposed to kind of get a feel for. We attentively thought, okay, we'll meet, but I
We
don't know if we want to start
are-
at 7:30, 8 o'clock
our
at night.
regular planning meetings run 2 hours.
Right,
So I don't know if you all wanna meet after we've already met for 2, I mean, we would then have a hard stop of 2 hours. But being that we're an every other month thing, we had said that, I apologized a couple months and said, we just plan on 2-hour meetings. This one should not have anticipated lasting this long, but a regular scheduled meeting
right.
will typically go 2 hours, so.
We're probably doing that on the 21st with HR and the superintendent check-in.
But HR, because they meet every month,
They're a little bit less.
They're still looking at 90 minutes at least.
right, but they typically have the ability to shrink agendas more so than we do because we're every other month.
Right,
Not asking you to make it any smaller, but you know,
Correct.
it has been brought up of having one night longer is preferable than trying to lose multiple evenings.
mhm.
But I would defer to what the will of the board.
I don't know how many
I
are gonna
know,
wanna
it's
sit through a 2 to 3 hour policy meeting
After.
after a
Well,
2 hour
that
planning
policy
meeting.
meeting,
But if you're, the only people
Will
that
not
should be
be.
attacked are the people who are on both committees.
right. And it's not a full force policy meeting. It's the transgender.
I believe Craig was expecting it to be less than an hour.
So
That-
I'll talk to the committee.
That's a good
Or-
goal, less than an hour. But I do
That's what
think,
we thought tonight, we're over
I do
2.
anticipate it's supposed to be less than 90 minutes, so yeah, I think we can do that.
I'm just saying this, I mean, if you say you're gonna have it, then we'd have a hard stop at the 2 hour mark, for
Yep.
sure.
Which,
And
think
we
it's
could have
fair.
done this under 2 hours, but we get
yeah,
into
we
little
knew we didn't have
sidebars.
to, so I think
Yeah,
that's fair.
so
Okay,
just let me know if you are doing it, obviously I would be.
So you're
I know,
aware.
So that way we can.
Yep.
Because that would just mean certain conversations, we would,
be like, okay,
really hold to the time boxing.
agree,
And I would just run the meeting differently, knowing that.
absolutely. And it was on my thing to do and I almost forgot.
Yeah, and so if you are gonna do that, no problem, we'll keep it to that.
Yeah.
But then I would ask, can you please forward questions to me ahead of time, most definitely, so we can get those, whether we're committee members or non-committee members, just to help move things along.
Yeah.
As well. All right, can I adjourn? Is that it? Adjourned,
Good.
7:38.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.